All right, welcome back to Power Lunch. President Trump preparing to meet with Russian leader Vladimir Putin on Friday in Alaska. Many investors, of course, keeping a close eye on energy and oil and the potential impact on that summit between the two leaders and what impact it might have on global energy prices. But that is only part of the story. Let's get the rest and why this meeting is so critical on many levels. Joining us now with her take and expectation, Halima Croft, Managing Director, Global Head of Commodity Strategy at RBC Capital Markets, CNBC contributor, and, dare I say, am I allowed to say former CIA analyst?
You can say that.
So you know the defense world. What are the scenarios Friday with outcomes for oil and gas? Do we have any idea?
Well, I think a lot of people look at this meeting and say, sanctions relief's on the table. We start thinking about Russian oil and gas flowing back into Europe. I think that is getting way ahead of ourselves because the sanctions architecture, as we pointed out, like most of the sanctions on Russian energy have been put in place by the Europeans. The United States has not put significant sanctions on Russian energy. We have not sanctioned Rosneft. We have not sanctioned Gazprom. And in fact, because Russian energy has largely flowed, it's no longer going into Europe to the same extent that it used to, but because it's going into Asia, they have the ATM. They have kept the money going. It's allowed Russia to continue to fight this war.
And this is respectfully to all of my colleagues and friends in the media, they've gotten us wrong. A lot of people have gotten us wrong. Right. Russia's economy, while not doing great, hasn't been suffering as much as people thought. Liquefied natural gas, as we've reported, has been flowing. You're talking about the oil sales. And there was an article in the New York Times this morning that you actually flagged to me, showing how much money, and here's the graphic, Russians are literally paying soldiers to fight, paying them in some cases to go die, right. 3-1 against Ukraine. But let's be clear, Russia has money.
They have the money to keep the war going. And I can tell you when the war started, there were people like Robin Brooks, he's at Brookings now, saying, if you do not sanction Russian oil, but you give Ukraine weapons, essentially it's not a short war scenario because one side can keep funding the war, the other can keep fighting. That is not a short war scenario. No. It is a stalemate scenario. And right now, I think the question is, are we in a stalemate or is Russia actually making significant tactical gains?
I'm going to say something I hate even saying. It grosses me out to even say it, Halima, but the reality is this. Trump and Biden have one thing in common.
No one wants high oil prices.
That's right. They don't want $6 a gallon gasoline. And if we actually sanction Russia, not just say we're going to sanction Russia, but wink, wink, right? And Russia's still able to sell oil, as we reported back in 2022, with this ghost fleet of ships that are uninsured or underinsured. If we really did that, say, you know what, bad outcome in Alaska, really sanction, what would happen with energy? $100 a barrel? 120 a barrel?
I mean, that's why oil prices ran up initially when the war started.
Yeah, to 125, I think, a barrel?
There was an expectation that we would do to Russia what we did to Iran in 2012, 2019. We did not impose secondary sanctions. Again, I mentioned Gazprom, Rosneft, not subject to secondary sanctions. And at the time, the argument was, sanction Russia, but not ourselves. We don't want to pay the higher price for the war. And so now we're at this point where Russia is spending so much money. They're not drafting people to fight.
They're paying them.
People to fight. So
literally mercenaries. They're saying to Russian men, and Russia, folks, I've been to Russia. I'm sure you've been to Russia. Steve Leach used to live in Moscow. Russia's a poor nation, okay? I'm just going to say it. It's proud people. It's a poor country. The money, if you can make a few $1,000s extra in Russia as an underemployed man, you're going to do it. I think that was the point of the New York Times article today was these desperate men who may have not a lot of training, they're going to get paid to basically go die.
And they're basically now able to recruit 1,000 people a day, double what Ukraine can recruit. And Ukraine now has a manpower shortage. And it's not just the fact that the Russians are paying people to fight. Look what they've done with the drone factories. Look how they've revamped the old industrial base to be a war machine.